Welcome to another episode of Focus on Taekwondo. I'm the host and founder of this podcast, Mark Russell. Have you ever wondered what it takes to get your black belt, win a tournament, perfect a poomsae, or defend yourself in the street? Well, here at Focus on Taekwondo, we intend to help you find those answers. We interview top professionals in their field, including masters, athletes and coaches, to give you an insight into what it takes for you to be the best you can be at this modern day, ancient global martial art and sport that is Taekwondo. So today we are interviewing Erica Stevens. She's an accredited sports dietitian and a former Taekwondo athlete for Australia. Hi Erica, great to have you on the podcast. I'm sure our listeners will be interested in what you have to say. So can you tell us a little about how you ended up writing a book about nutrition for Taekwondo?
Yeah, so thanks for the questions as well. I'm very interested to help you out with these. So I did Taekwondo as a young person and moved up to black belt fairly quickly, and then started to represent Australia in fighting or sparring competitions. So things like Junior World Championships and Junior Asian Championships, and then the senior teams as well. And I ended up stopping quite young. So I stopped the sport when I was around 21, which is pretty young, when, a lot of people can go all throughout their 20s and even into their 30s.
Yep.
And I found I had some real trouble, I guess, with not fueling my body properly for the amount of training that I was doing. And so I basically burnt out is, I guess, the medical term for it. I couldn't keep up with what I was doing, and my body just suffered for that. So I had a break, and then I never went back.
Okay.
And, yeah, I guess my thought from there was, well, how do I help people avoid this? Because if I'd stayed in the sport, who knows what I might have been able to achieve. So I just went to uni from there, did a bachelor and a master's in nutrition and dietetics, and then went on and did the Olympic Committee diploma in sports nutrition.
Excellent.
And as a part of that program, I did a big assignment on Taekwondo specifically. And then I thought, well, how can I make this useful and practical for someone who might have been in my position, or who might currently be in the position I was back when I was younger.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I mean, I know certainly when I was younger, I had no idea what the best nutrition was. I mean, I ended up cutting out protein instead of, because I thought that'll make me bigger, so I don't want to be bigger, and I ate more carbs, and I just hadn't a clue, so it's great that you're doing this,
Yeah, so we kind of do all the wrong things when we only have, little snippets of information.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that's good. Okay, excellent. So with Taekwondo being a weight category sport, what are the problems that you have found as a dietitian or sport nutritionist that keep coming up with the athletes?
Yeah, so I guess going back to what I just said, there's very little information available, and the information that is available, particularly online, is a little bit confusing and not particularly useful, particularly for weight category sports. And people sort of go about making weight in all the wrong ways. So they can significantly reduce their intake relative to their requirements, or they can go down the dehydration route, or do both at the same time. And so, there's significant effect, obviously, to performance and health when things are taken to extremes. And because athletes are pretty extreme people, they tend to do extreme things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I had one experience of, I had a competition in Greece, and I got hit in the head. I'd lost a lot of weight to get to the competition, and I got hit in the head, and basically I couldn't remember one of the rounds at all. I was ready to fight the third round, and the guy's like, no, you've done it, that's it, finished. It's like, oh.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, so loss of concentration.
Yeah, definitely.
And not really knowing what's happening.
Yeah. Do you feel that the rules in Taekwondo, which suit the more taller and slimmer athletes, make more and more competitors cut weight more drastically, making athletes more at risk of injury?
That's certainly the culture in the sport, and what is said and what is emphasised from coaches and athletes between themselves. There's still very much a strong belief that it is good to cut weight if you can, and to try and make a lighter weight division if you can, sort of why not? Because of that advantage of, well, you just might be the tallest or the longest limbs in the division. But I guess some personal opinion in this is that if you're a good fighter, you're a good fighter, and you should be able to compete against anyone in the division below you and anyone in the division above you. I think a couple of kilos doesn't make a great big difference to your ability to win.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I like personally, I like Aaron Cook, and he's quite small for his division. Everybody else seems to be quite, a lot taller. So
there's always
I think he's good. Yeah, definitely.
So it's, I guess, sometimes pointing those athletes out to other athletes and saying, look, they're not manipulating their weight just to get, a couple of inches of advantage. They're just focusing on their training and who they are as a fighter and what their strengths are, and sort of maxing out on those, and letting everyone else cut weight and feel terrible, and then you can beat them.
Yeah, definitely. That's it.
Yeah.
No, it's good. Okay.
I think significant advantage to not cutting weight, because you're so much faster and quicker and more
alert,
able to concentrate, and
yeah, it's good. Okay. So one of the things that basically about children, so I mean, personally, I've never asked or encouraged children to make weight for competitions. I've always said you fight at your natural weight, which is what we've kind of just talked about. Is this, in your opinion, the right thing to do for children for the long-term development of the child, or is it okay for children to cut weight? Because I know a lot of our listeners probably are either coaches who might say to their guys, look, you should try and get down to the next weight, but is it a good idea?
So the answer is no. Children shouldn't be losing weight at all. They are, they're in an age where they're supposed to be growing and developing, and what comes with growth is an increase on the scale. It's a natural change in the child's physique and body size. So you get increased bone mass, you get increased blood volume. Everything changes as a child grows. So to actually put someone in a situation where they're losing weight, you are compromising their ability to grow and develop properly. So you're taking away energy intake in the form of food in order to try and get that weight loss, and that lack of food or lack of energy compromises their ability to grow properly.
Yeah, definitely. That's good.
So it is a big problem. It is a big problem. I see it in Australia. I see coaches still encouraging that because they think there is a competitive advantage for their kids to be fighting lighter. But the child should be moving up in divisions as their weight dictates, and not manipulating their weight, and then seeing where they fall as an adult.
Yeah. No, good. Yeah. Okay. So taking the fact that, unfortunately, athletes, even after listening to this, possibly, they may still cut weight because people, they listen to things and sometimes they don't take it in. But I'm hoping they do. But so taking the fact that the athlete has cut weight, is there any recommendations as to what to do to get that athlete post-weight into recovery well and prepare for the matches the next day?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of research finally in the science world on that matter, and it really largely comes down to what the athlete has done to make weight, so whether it was significantly reducing food intake or fluid intake, and then to what degree they've done that. So obviously someone that is incredibly dehydrated needs a much more aggressive, I guess, approach to rehydration as soon as they've weighed in, and in those sort of hours before they go to sleep that night, and then again in the morning, topping up and everything. So it's hard to give a very broad answer to that question because it's highly dependent on the athlete and what they've actually done and to what degree they've done it, which is why I think there's such a place for sports dietitians to be working in this sport and travelling with these athletes, so that someone on the team is actually accountable for what these athletes are doing to themselves, and are they actually recuperating in a manner that allows them to be at their most competitive.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I know that the MMA, the UFC, they all have their dietitians there trying to get them back in, and I think it definitely makes a difference, you know. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, we just unfortunately don't have the money that UFC does.
Yeah, definitely.
They're all gazillionaires.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay. So, would you say that it is important to cut weight slowly or quickly? What would your advice be to ensure, whilst cutting weight, the athlete still maintains good nutritional balance, ensuring they get the nutrients, macronutrients, and are hydrated efficiently in, say, maybe the week or weeks leading up to a competition?
Yeah, so it comes back a little bit again to the individual athlete and how much weight they're trying to lose. So if there's a significant amount of weight that they're trying to shift and they have adequate body fat stores in which to manipulate, you would start with a long-term strategy. So it'd be something you would do over months or even up to a year or more, depending on how much they needed to lose. If you've got an athlete that's incredibly lean but wants to drop a kilo or two, a very small amount of weight, to make a division lower, you might look at two options. So some fluid restriction, not dehydrating the athlete, but just restricting some fluid in the 24, 48 hours before weigh-in, and also employing what we call a low residue or a low fibre diet.
Okay.
So you basically take the fibre out of what they normally eat, and have very low fibre foods for 24 or 48 hours. And that just reduces the gut residue that sits in the gut all the time. So we sort of walk around with 1 or 2 kilos of, food in our stomach or in our gastrointestinal tract. So if we can just eat low fibre foods and let that food pass through, we can be a little bit lighter but not affect performance or affect food intake.
So what would
it comes back. Sorry, yeah.
So what would that low fibre be then? What would that food be? Could you give us a few examples of that? Or
yeah, so examples of low fibre foods. I'm not sure what sort of cereals people have around the world, but here things like rice bubbles are a very low fibre cereal. Milk, there's no fibre in milk. Things like white bread and cheese or ham sandwiches at lunch, and then like a liquid meal supplement for dinner that is that doesn't have any fibre in it. So you take out fruit and vegetables, you take out your grainy breads and brown rice and things. So this isn't something you do all the time, obviously. It's not a healthy way of eating, but it is useful just in that acute period to help a very lean athlete just drop that 1 or 2 kilos and not affect performance at all.
Okay. Excuse me. So with going vegan and vegetarian on the increase within the sports community, how does this affect your job? Is the myth it's harder to ensure people get enough protein correct, or just led by the uneducated?
It does make things more challenging when you've got an athlete that excludes certain food groups. So vegetarians who will cut out animal products, and then vegans who will also cut out any products derived from animals, so even dairy foods. So you've got to be a bit more creative and find other ways of getting the nutrients that they're lacking from not eating those food groups somewhere else. And in terms of protein, it is a bit of a myth that vegetarians or vegans really struggle to reach their protein requirements. We actually, if we eat well, we tend to do pretty well in reaching our protein requirement.
Okay.
Athletes do need a little bit more protein than the general population, but athletes don't need tons more. So generally speaking, when you analyse someone's diet that's just walked in off the street, they generally don't have a protein problem, even if they're vegetarian or vegan, so long as they're eating well. If they're eating poorly, you're probably going to see a lack of protein there. Yeah.
So, I mean, with the vegans and that, do they need to eat more, and to get that protein, would you say?
Yeah, so the issue with vegans is they don't, in general, get a lot of calories from a lot of their foods. So they do have to eat a much larger volume of food in order to even reach their energy requirements for the day. And so what you see with that, particularly if they're including things like lentils, because they eat more to get the energy that they need, they should be hitting those protein requirements as well. Okay. You'd be looking at using alternative dairy products, so things like soy milk does contain some protein.
Yeah.
So when you add up all the foods that they eat over the day, you're going to be getting close to them hitting their protein requirement.
Okay, good. Yeah. So is there one nutrient that can have an amazing effect on athletes' Taekwondo performance, or is a balanced diet all they need to perform at their best?
Yeah, balance always wins.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's no magic bullet or magic pill or magic nutrient even that makes all the difference. We do need a little bit of everything, and we need it in adequate amounts. The supplement world is interesting, and something that's not considered a nutrient but would be interesting to do studies or tests in with Taekwondo athletes would be caffeine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how that affects their awareness and concentration when they fight, but without also making them overly anxious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I've had a few questions, people asking me things, and what would you recommend athletes eat between matches during competition day? I'm guessing it will depend on the timescales between those matches.
Yeah, so it's really hard on competition day because we never know, when someone's going to fight. It's just you're sort of hanging around and waiting and not too sure. And then you've got anxiety and you've got nerves around the fact that you're fighting someone. It's not the same as having a soccer match. It's a little bit of a different degree of nervousness. And so people don't like to have a lot of food in their stomach because they feel a bit nervous. And also people tend to want to feel light on the mats and be able to move well and move freely and move quickly. So they don't like to eat a lot for that reason either. So you want to avoid certainly the issue of not eating enough. But the good thing about Taekwondo is that fights are only 3 rounds and very short rounds. So we don't expend a lot of energy on a fight day. I mean, it depends how many fights you have, but generally speaking, it's not the same as a 2-hour training session.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what I find works really well for people is using adequate sources of carbohydrate in the food. So things like sandwiches or flavoured yogurts, and not heavy foods. So again, even going sort of down that low fibre route again, so you don't sort of feel too full at any stage in the day either. Some liquid foods can help, things like, I don't know if everyone in the world has Sustagen or Milo or some of those sort of chocolate flavoured drinks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Chocolate milk, that sort of thing, so you can drink some calories instead of having to actually eat solid food. And I just encourage people to have something to eat as soon as they finish a fight, if they can manage it, because that will be the period in which it's the longest until they'll fight again. Because if you sort of put off eating something after a fight, you could end up having a snack and then all of a sudden you have to have another fight. So as soon as you finish the fight, just topping up with a little bit of something, which gives you a good period of time to digest it.
Okay, yeah, no, definitely. Okay, so obviously the other side of it is the food, and also the hydration, So how important is proper hydration during training and competing? Is there any stats on performance increases or decreases due to hydration issues?
Yeah, in the sports science world, there's lots of literature around dehydration and how it affects performance, but not in Taekwondo. We don't really know. There's not enough studies in that world, but it's mainly done in endurance sports, and they see a dehydration level of 2% of your initial body weight lost in the form of fluid tends to affect performance negatively. So, for a 70-kilo person, that's only 1 or 2 kilos, 1 or 2 litres of fluid lost, where you start to see a detriment. So it doesn't take a lot to sort of move into that realm of, well, this is starting to affect performance. I think with training, obviously, there's a high demand for fluid because it's such a high intensity sport, and some of our training sessions can be really demanding. Comp day, it really depends a lot on how well you've rehydrated post weigh-in, so long as you haven't really hurt yourself with making weight. Then on comp day, there's not really a great risk to dehydration if you are hydrating adequately throughout the day and not forgetting to drink, because that can be an issue.
Yeah, so I mean, the secret is just, preparing over the weeks before, like you're saying, before post-weigh-in. You want to make sure that you're hydrated properly for that, and then the competition day should be fine.
Yeah, so ideally you're not dehydrating to make weight.
Yeah.
That is the best
key
scenario.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in terms of watching your hydration status during training sessions, a really good way to do that is to weigh yourself before and after training. So if you weigh yourself before a session and you're 70 kilos, and then you finish the session and you're 68, you've lost 2 kilos or you've lost 2 litres of fluid. Okay. I don't know if I'm talking in metrics.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah.
So then you need to at least replace that 2 litres that you've lost, and then a little bit more, because as soon as we stop training, we don't necessarily stop sweating right at that moment. We continue with that process for some time afterwards. So we actually need to replace a little bit more than what we lose in order to cool ourselves adequately rehydrated from that session.
Okay.
So your day-to-day stuff is really important too.
So, I mean, can you check how hydrated you are by your pee, the colour of your pee, or does that not?
Yeah, certainly. So that's another sort of practical way of keeping an eye on it daily, where, clear or very pale yellow urine is hydrated, and then your dark yellow or brown is incredibly dehydrated. So there's your range.
Yeah, definitely. So the clearer the better, basically.
Yeah.
One of the things I always I drink a lot of juices. So one of the juices I drink is beetroot. I'm not sure if you're familiar with beetroot, but it makes your pee go red, so it's very dangerous sometimes if you forget.
Yeah, what's happening here?
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So do you find athletes within sports with weight categories are at higher risk of developing eating disorders, be it at the time of competing or possibly more so after their competing days are over?
Yes, so there is a higher risk in weight category sports, and as well as any athletic sports, so sports where how you look is important, or where clothing is minimal. Things like diving and synchronized swimming come to mind. But in general, athletes tend to have a higher risk as well because of some of the personality traits that attract a person to high-level sport anyway, so that sort of high achiever aspect as well as the personality. So there's a few things that sort of all come together that can create a bit of an environment where an eating disorder could be supported and occur. It would be more likely that they'd have it in the sport as opposed to in retirement. So yeah, again, it's the environment of the sport and the actual weight making and the focus on body weight and potentially the focus on how someone looks that tends to kind of increase the risk. And other people telling them to lose weight or drop weight division, it just can foster, those behaviours that can become an eating disorder.
So so as a coach, is there anything that we should do, or to avoid that?
So certainly, a lot of it can be how a coach speaks and what they say to athletes about weight and about bodies and how we look, and it can be good to focus on words like being fit and strong and fast, and talking about or saying words that describe performance as opposed to body. So, instead of using words like light or lighter or thin, so kind of moving away from the descriptive body words to what the body can do. And so just sort of changing the environment and the culture in how the coach speaks can be of benefit to the athlete, so it takes that focus away from weight and how the body actually looks to how it actually performs.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, yeah. Okay.
And also, obviously, moving away from, thinking that changing weight divisions is the answer to success.
Yeah.
So the less that we focus on weight and manipulating weight for a different weight division, the more we can actually focus on training and, well, what else do we need to work on? Is it our stepping? Is it kicks? Is it a certain technique that's not good enough? And so then we focus on the things that actually really matter, as opposed to the weight side of things that where we could be using our attention a little bit better.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, thank you. So just one last question. What is it that makes Taekwondo different to other martial arts, and how would you describe what it takes to be a black belt?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are a lot of martial arts. A lot of people ask me why I wrote a book for Taekwondo and not for martial arts or for combat sports in general. And to me, they're all so different. I couldn't bring myself to write a general kind of book. I wanted it to be for Taekwondo athletes in particular. It is a kicking sport predominantly, and there is nothing else like it. And I think that's what differentiates it from everyone else. And also, being an Olympic sport now, a lot of the other martial arts aren't Olympic sports. So that makes it a little bit unique as well.
Yeah, okay.
What was the last question? What it takes to be...
Yeah, what it takes to be a black belt, yeah.
Yeah, I think it takes so many things. In particular, I think the mental side of it is huge. So dedication and commitment to ongoing training. I think probably that's just the biggest thing. Yeah. Is seeing it through, through the hard days and the good days. It's not stopping. And eventually you get there. It's just a lot of hard work.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. So we know you're in Australia, obviously. Where about in Australia are you?
I'm in Canberra.
All right, okay, excellent. So I mean, how best is it for people to get in touch with you or get your book? A little bit of a plug for the book there. Is there any other services you offer?
Yeah, so my website is just nutritionfortaekwondo.com. Okay. So that's where the book is. It's an ebook, so it just sits on the site and it just goes directly to your email. My contact details are there, so my email is info@nutritionfortaekwondo.com. And then the Instagram page is exactly the same, Nutrition for Taekwondo. And so people often direct message me on the Instagram page. That seems to be the most common way people get in touch. Okay. But yeah, email or Instagram. And I do have a Facebook page, but it's a little bit less active than the Instagram. Yep. But I love getting questions from people and I try and answer as best I can. I can't, unfortunately, give too detailed responses because of insurance and things. I can't just give out information to people that I don't know or haven't seen properly in a consultation. But I do try and answer your questions as best as possible and I enjoy it.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, thank you very much for the information you've shared with us today, and I wish you continued success with everything you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That was fun.
Yeah, hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So if you'd like to hear more interviews about Taekwondo, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment on iTunes. Also, you can check out our website on www.focusontaekwondo.com for all the links and more information on the podcast.